The next part of the strategies that I wanted to touch base on was converting recipes in lab plans. So, this specific strategy comes in with conversions and basically taking that piece individually of culinary math and really working on taking a recipe and converting each of them into be half, double, and triple the amount, just so students get practice with not only conversions of different ingredient amounts, but also of fractions as well. This could be done in a possible lab plan in the culinary setting because students do have to plan for every cooking lab that they do. The impact for this one was, I would say, a medium based. Students are gaining that experience, but it also isn't too hands on. It's just kind of more written. The feasibility is medium as well, just because some students may have a lot of difficulty with the double and the tripling, and is it really impacting them in a simple way. And then the last strategy that I found was an observation demonstration by me as the teacher. So students just basically watching me measure, watching me do the skills, taking notes, asking questions, um, figuring out what mistakes I'm making along the way, and possibly gaining and retaining some of that information for their future. Impact would be medium just because they could see the correct way of doing certain things. And the feasibility would be medium too, because sometimes students' views and perceptions are a little bit different when watching me versus doing it themselves. So overall, I didn't think the last two were too impactful or feasible just for what the other two strategies were being high. But let's see what I came up with. So the chosen strategy that I decided to do was just a measuring review stations lab. I thought both the impact and feasibility were high. I really liked how I can touch on all aspects of culinary math. I could repeat this level after level, twice a semester, 3 times a semester, whenever I see fit. And I like how the other strategies were great, but I really liked how this one really pulled all of them together instead of one specific culinary math item, just so we can go over everything and kind of see where students are struggling. So, in order to implement this cooperative learning stations activity, I must group students onto that 6 groups of 4 based on their level of mastery, guiding students through each station as they're going through, kind of stepping back and letting them do the work, but really answering any questions throughout the stations. Not trying not to solve the problems for students, and I will admit that is something that I'm continually working on, is having students be um, soothing and sustainable for certain questions, and me not having to solve all of their issues, giving timely feedback to them, if they're doing something wrong, if they need help with something, really working through their measuring and giving encouragement, of course, and positive reinforcement when necessary. Students are required to work as a team to ensure that all their measuring practices are met, not just leaving it up to one person, really working as a group to each practice these measuring techniques and indicators. Communication with one another with any questions or comments, knowing how to solve these problems without me, like I mentioned before, but also asking for help when needed, and ensuring each station is performed and also back to its original state, since we will be working with ingredients a lot when it's complete for the next station to roll around. And then, really making sure that they are staying on a timely manner for when their timer goes off that I'll have on my board. The classroom, like I said, needs to have a timer. It needs to be set up with all of these stations and ingredients and measuring tools. I need to provide those games or activities for at one or more stations for certain ideas with fractions, giving students a guide along the way that they could fill out with check for understanding questions. And this can also be a great way, if students get done early, to have something else to work on. Having room for teamwork and collaboration throughout my classroom. And then, students showing me their work and evidence of cooperation and completion within the stations, and understanding for future labs. So it's very doable, it's very feasible, but all of these indicators need to be complete in order for implementation to take place. So, let's say all teachers kind of reviewed some of these instructional strategies within my department. Start next school year. Let's say August comes around, we look at our instructional strategies that we have found, and this is our timeline. This is what we want and when we want to complete our work by for our students to improve for future years. In October, after we've kind of talked about the instructional strategies, it's important for teachers to kind of observe other culinary classes around the area, maybe our own each other's classrooms, and kind of see, like, how is culinary run there? How is culinary math absorbed there? What are they doing to help their students? When November comes around, closer to the end of first semester, really identifying major concerns with our culinary math students and where they're struggling. In that same month, then, we can develop that stations activity. We can kind of pull out some of the basic culinary math techniques that they're struggling with, and then we can create the stations based on that. In December, after all the stations are done, we're happy with our strategy, kind of develop performance indicators for students to determine their success and ability levels within this activity. January comes around, it's a new semester, new culinary classes are starting, and we begin implementing these in all levels. In February, March, we kind of still continue with students throughout labs. We observe each other's lessons and provide feedback for all classes. We kind of see where students are headed, how often we have to perform these stations activities. Are they improving in their lab? Do we need to repeat this? How is this working out for us? And then in April, at the end of the school year, analyzing our data at the end of this to assess how effective was this instructional strategy. How many times did we have to maybe perform it? How are students improving? What else can we do to ensure our students are succeeding? So after all that's said and done, and hopefully it would work out, we would assess it. We would stress the instructional strategy and say, would we do this again in the future? As I mentioned before, we'd give that same kitchen basics measuring test every year and just see how much they're growing. And hopefully that data, that overall data that I showed you in the beginning of this presentation, shows students improving more and more every year. Comparing and contrasting their culinary math skills, what else do we need to improve skill and curriculum wise in order for students to succeed? And for that, we need to pay close attention to our labs and our student skills. And then, of course, implement any other action plans based on any other researched instructional strategies that we see fit. So overall, I am hoping that this action plan will help our students succeed in the culinary math world, and all of the research and all of the data that we have found within this action plan will be useful and successful. Thank you for listening.